I would have started following rugby in the kind of mid to late 80s. There was certainly a mystique that was around the All Blacks that perhaps has diluted over time with familiarity, but these were, you know, machines of men that were coming from an obscure place far, far away, and they played Leinster. I went to see that game age 9 in Lansdowne Road. It was one of the first ever games I saw on Lansdowne Road, and Tuigamala, the famous winger, had knocked the Leinster fullback unconscious in a heavy tackle, and there was a real sense that these guys were at a different physical level to the Irish competitors on the day.
Buck Shelford would have been one of my favourite players growing up, and he was one of the guys who brought in the haka and everything like that, where this aura around them built up. And in fairness, they backed it up. We always went out against them and then slipped away. Even if you were in it with a short amount of time left, it always just slipped away. The confidence just wasn't quite there.
There was a reverence and a mystery about the All Blacks that always kind of excited the rugby public when they arrived.
Absolutely can't stay. They're the only team that I will cheer for England if they're playing them. Now, I'm not saying something.
Certainly in the last 10 years there were more near misses. Prior to Soldier Field we were getting closer to them, but you'd watch it because it was the All Blacks. You would hope that today could be the day that the most outrageous special event might take place, but you never really had any faith. And even the really good Irish teams like Eddie's Irish team that played so much good rugby came close on a couple of occasions, but it just seemed to be that one Irish sporting achievement that might never come off.
The huge advantage being that the win in Chicago had finally broken the mould and given us the confidence that we could go and beat an All Blacks team. There were some comments amid the public and the media that was an All Blacks squad that wasn't overly bothered about performance down in Chicago, but when you re-watch the game, they didn't shirk anything physically. They didn't look like they were struggling for motivation, but it was a superb Irish performance, a creative Irish performance that asked so many questions of them in Chicago. A positive 2017 Six Nations, a 2018 Grand Slam, and a victorious tour down in Australia. So I think it was justified to think we had a real chance to beat the All Blacks for the first time on Irish soil.
Was commentating on the game, and the atmosphere was like no game I've ever been at before or since. It was absolutely stunning. The place was packed. There wasn't a seat empty for the anthems. Everybody was there long before kick-off of the game. There was just an incredible electric atmosphere right away, rippling around the crowd, and it was just a real anticipation, but also tinged with a little bit of uncertainty. Were we as good as we hoped we actually were?
Standout memory really revolves around Stockdale in the first half, particularly with the kick being blocked down early on. He's symbolic of that younger Irish generation, so full of confidence, so fearless, playing against the best in the world. He was foolhardy in a way to take on a chip from deep with no cover or defence behind him, and Kieran Reid blocked it down, and 9 times out of 10 type of thing he would have regathered, and support runners flooding through either side. I'm sure they would have scored 9 times out of 10. But for Stockdale to react with such poise from a really, almost a really crucial mistake, but to go ahead and take on another chip kick, albeit in a different circumstance, 5 minutes later, I think characterised what this Irish side had become.
That day we made so few mistakes. I mean, we only scored 16 points. That should never be enough to beat New Zealand. We had to score more than double that in Soldier Field to beat them. But because the game plan was so well executed and our defence was so well organised, 16 points was enough to beat them. Because it was so close, you couldn't really breathe, because you know that New Zealand can blow a game open at any moment. The full-time whistle was great because you could just tell yourself that you were around to see it happening, and you could add it to the long list of things that this team has achieved under Joe that will have people talking about these iconic moments for so long. And if you were to put together a list of the top 10 or 15 iconic moments of Irish rugby, a lot of them will have come from the last 6 years.
I would categorically say that the day in 2018 against the All Blacks was the best atmosphere I've ever been at in 30 years of going to see games in Lansdowne Road.
As a one-off game, it's up there with the biggest victories that Irish rugby has ever had. I would still rank Soldier Field ahead of it because that was the first.
You know, my dislike of New Zealand has been stated already, so I was delighted. We've beat New Zealand twice and you had your full team out. There's no debate. Right now, Ireland, not ranking at the time, but results-wise, we're the #1 team in the world.